Good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and call the June 17th meeting of the Utility Service Board to order. Just as a reminder, our City of Bloomington Utilities mission is to enhance the quality of life in our community by providing safe, sustainable, and high-quality drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater services in a cost-effective manner, promoting public health, economic vitality, and environmental stewardship. And as a reminder, if any board member has any personal or financial conflict with any issues or individuals on the agenda, then please be sure to recuse yourself during those portions of the meeting. Our first item on the agenda is our petitions and communications. And good evening, we have a presentation from Champlin Architecture. We have a 50% design presentation for the proposed new service center and maintenance facility. Sean Bright, Chris Cioli, welcome. Just as a reminder, the microphone picks you up for Kat. And if you'd please introduce yourself.
All right, great. So I'm Chris Cioli. I'm with Weddle Brothers. We were hired on as the construction manager for the new CBU Winston Thomas property. So just kind of what I want to do just real quickly is kind of take us back to where we started, remind everybody where we were, where we plan to go, and then what today means. So just going back to January, somewhere in that time frame, Weddle Brothers came on board as the CMA. Champlin was hired as the architect to do some planning, some programming, and take the original master plan that was conducted pre-COVID by CRIPE and reevaluate it, see what worked, what didn't work, what was realistic, and really what, just kind of start over essentially, because lots changed. We don't work the same way we used to. The needs of the community are different, and the growth of the community has changed quite a bit. So, as I said, we originally started off with the CRIPE program. Champlin and team went through. They met with various user groups, stakeholders throughout the process, multiple meetings, lots and lots of time went into it, trying to understand what do you need now, what do you need 10 years down the road, what do you need 20 years down the road, what does the service building need, what does the maintenance building need, how do we grow this to be environmentally friendly and efficient, and then also what's going to cost the community, I think is really the driving factor. So just some of the things that I think are important that I presented back in November-ish. I gave a preliminary budget based off the CRIPE summary, and that number, I'm not going to hold anything back. It's different today than what it was. Big shocker, right? Things are getting more expensive. But we have an explanation as to why. And then what I'll do is I'll hand this over to Sean for presentation to walk through the renderings, the ask as of today, what the staff has said they want. And then afterward, I'll step back up here and I'll give a quick overview of where we are financially, let you all process that. Then whatever happens moving forward will be up to you. But the ask in January was that we get it to 50%, get the drawings to 50%, get the budget to 50%, bring it back to the USB. Then you can decide, do you pause and go to the rate case and ask for the funding? Do you say, no, we don't want this, scrap it, we're done? Or do you ask for something different? So all that is still possible. Today is just an information session. There's no decision to come out of this. It's just to let you know what we've done over the past 6 or 7 months. So with that, I'd like to hand it over to Sean.
Good evening. Pleasure to be with you again. My name is Sean Bright. I'm a principal with Champlin Architecture. I lead our office out of Indianapolis. Also with me this evening is Brandy Haney. She's going to pass out a few things and will likely end up coming up to the microphone at some point as well. But just to reiterate what Chris had mentioned is the process that we've been through has been very involved, getting to know Kat and everybody and each of the departments, and even filtering down further into additional users within each department for continued and refined feedback. What you'll see here is a culmination of the efforts over the past 6 months or so. Our efforts primarily at 50% DD, we were complete around the beginning of May. We have since gone through additional rendering support to help continue to tell the story as to internally, externally, as to how things have come together, and then also assisting Weddle as they've gone through their pricing exercises as well. There are some things in here that we do want to certainly highlight after meeting with you several months ago that we have incorporated, and so we want to make sure that we're highlighting what's changed since we met you last, as well as where we are, but really to celebrate, I think, what has been an excellent overall and very collaborative process with staff in understanding operational goals, sustainable goals, and then how ultimately this impacts your ability to sustain growth well into the future. Let's see if I can do this. So it largely, just going back diagrammatically, and we're going to take you through some of the design thought, is just as a reiteration, is we have basically three major components for, if you include the parking to work on the site, between the service building, the maintenance building, your storage and fleet yard, if you will, a pretty significant improvement to how you operate within your fleet and storage yard, and then also parking. One of the things that you'll also notice here is that this site, based on all of those parameters, has grown a decent amount in terms of what was originally anticipated for impact and development versus where we are now. So we have literally almost double the amount of parking on site, and that is planned to accommodate future growth as well. The service building in and of itself is largely about what was originally conceived. It was about 1,000 square feet bigger. The maintenance building is probably the area that we saw the largest amount of growth, understanding how each of your areas should indeed be structured. So the maintenance building is certainly larger. We were able to get 2.5, nearly 3 acres out of the fleet and storage yard, whereas the master plan, I think, only anticipated maybe 1.8 or so. So we're almost double. We're not quite double what was originally master planned, but we did meet extensively with staff on the number of vehicles, how to store them, whether it's internal, covered, or open parking. So we went through all of that as well. And then, of course, all of the materials that need to be stored and protected, because your pipe is certainly, not being stored in the sun is not exactly great for it. We evaluated circulation, understanding that safety is huge when you're dealing with large trucks with lots of materials. Understanding primary circulation, secondary circulation. We are indeed proposing that the primary entrance shift a little to the east, as opposed to where it is now, to give a better use of the site and get the parking and the development to the west, if you will. And that'll make sense here in a little bit when we start to talk about the drainage and flow. But overall, the green is primarily highlighting all of the the truck circulation. The light blue is basically visitors, and then the red is basically staff. So it's pretty significant in understanding, from a safe circulation standpoint and proximity standpoint, who is able to circulate and where. We do have some purple lines on there, and those are primarily seen as daily deliveries and pickups from UPS, FedEx, et cetera. So again, segregating that as well. Just from a massing standpoint, we'll go through these a little bit quickly. As we started off with just basic general shapes to understand the footprint and impact for each. We then, as we validated through a series of meetings with the departmental staff, each of the assistant directors in their various departments, and validating the program size, and turned those into, again, just a very quick blocking diagram. So that's what this graphic is representing, and also just the general adjacencies to one another. How each of the departments works with each other was also considered, not just the size. And again, we started to take a little bit of form with the building, which was driven significantly by solar exposure, understanding some of the significant goals for sustainability on this project. Next diagram starts to understand that solar commitment and the opportunities that you do have in order to implement solar panels on the roof. So pretty significant on the maintenance building. on the sawtooth structures of the service building, and then on each of the covered areas in the service bays. So over your parking, your covered parking areas, and even over your storage areas as well. The light yellow indicates commitments to daylighting. Again, from a sustainable criteria, the exposure to daylight was something that was significantly discussed with leadership and staff, even into the maintenance facility, so that it can indeed be daylit during the day. So you'll see from the floor plans internal workrooms within that maintenance bay that still have access to direct sunlight. A couple of other key components here is this facility does include an optional lab, and it is identified, I believe, as an alternate in the pricing. And we did end up designing that so that it can be considered as an alternate. You either build it day one or you don't, and it can be provided in the future if potentially needed. But that is also shown, and it is this appendage. If you can see my cursor, it's just right there. Very upfront, very accessible to visitors, understanding from Kat and her team that they do have frequent, particularly during pool season and all of that stuff, frequent visitors to your site. Give them nice, safe circulation and access. We also started to study the green infrastructure on the site, and one of the major pivots that we, after again exploring further with the team, with leadership, is the commitment to a series of linked bioswales and understanding the green infrastructure and celebrating what it is that you all do here at the City of Bloomington Utilities. And you'll see as we get to the more formal site plan, the commitment that we have to the detention and treatment, water quality treatment of water as it's before it's released into Clear Creek. But understanding that we wanted to do this in a way that is a best practice that you would like to see implemented across the city of Bloomington in other developments. So it was very important for us in that sense. In that, we certainly started to understand the water flow. So knowing that the site has about 22 or so feet of vertical grade differential from east to west, one of the major driving factors was the flow of water, and also where we could legitimately build a building. The circulation of your trucks is very important. So that started to drive the major circulation of those components a little bit further west. The idea that the service building could be a facility that gives each of your departments great views also moved it further west as opposed to east, as may have been anticipated in the original master plan. If we had stayed to the east, that building would have been half embedded in the earth in order to make it work, because it is so steep in order to get the grade transitions to work. So we worked very closely with REA and Bledsoe Riggert to understand the flow of not just water, but also the topography, use of topography on this project. In here, there are a couple of really interesting features, and I do want to point them out. The purple area is something that we are, that through our design process, we're proposing that we're capturing water from the roofs of the covered parking, the covered storage, and using it as an opportunity to serve the truck wash and in that sense. So we're performing two functions at once. We're capturing, reusing, but we're also eliminating the need for that excess flow and treatment and storage before it's released into Clear Creek. And so the way that this has been sized conceptually at this point is that we're basically sized to capture a 5 to 6 inch rain for the contributory area on this, and to be able to store that, and then ultimately be able to use that for your vehicles, or if you have other folks who want to come, other service components within the city you want to share that with, it is there. We do have a release strategy and also the paved strategy. There is another bioretention area to the north there, so surface drainage does ultimately release into there. And anything that doesn't get captured from the roofs of the buildings, which we are also showing, we don't have traditional roof drains on this. We have designed the facility to release and basically release that water to the surface level where it does indeed get taken into bioswales and then ultimately, from a water quality standpoint, released into Clear Creek. So even the roof water is being captured as part of this proposed strategy. So it is a commitment, and in your original budget, there was a commitment to green initiatives. The site development on this project and the strategies here, particularly for water, are probably the single largest commitment to that green initiative strategy that was implemented originally. Formal rendering of the site, I think, really starts to show, how sustainable this site can be. And will be from a water flow standpoint. We saw the diagrams, but the biggest area of improvement that we have seen was the redesign of the parking lot. And I don't recall that. I think it was a little bit different the last time you saw it. But what we've done is effectively created a series of 4 or 5 linked bioswales. So we're capturing from the maintenance building. We're capturing from the parking lot. We're also linking it to the bioswales prior to release into Clear Creek. And so we also have on the opposite side of the building, the service building to the south and to the west, and then also over here to the north of the primary yard area. But just a significant commitment to the green initiative sustainability on the site. We have indeed, from a landscape standpoint, accommodated the balance of commitments that are required by the city in that sense. We've also incorporated a few additional things that, through Kat's encouragement, is to improving the riparian zones, is to going through taking out invasives, things of that nature. But a pretty significant commitment to the overall site. As we get into the design of the building, again, just remembering that the form of the building, as we mentioned a second ago, is particularly of the service building, is largely taken in terms of a reaction to the solar orientation of the site. And we also like the fact that it is a little bit reminiscent of the Showers building in that sense. But these 3 sawtooth structures really highlight your very public areas. So the one on the far end, the north end, is of your large meeting space, which is where you can have pre-con services and things of that nature. Leadership, the director can have larger meetings as well. A portion of it is actually a mezzanine, a mechanical mezzanine, so the areas that are less visible are incorporated. The middle one is primarily your boardroom, and then also, as it goes to the third structure basically captures your training room and then also the main entrance into the facility. So they highlight the public areas within the facility, really elevate the area so we don't just have a 10.5 or 11-foot ceiling, 2x2 ceiling, but really starts to capture the commitment to daylight and quality of environment in there. The balance of the renderings will also show the commitment to that sustainability. We've got mow strips around the natural elements, and you'll see a few here that start to really show how the bioswales and everything work within that. But the facility itself is largely seen to be done out of brick and metal panels. So again, a judicious use of materials in that sense. We have worked limestone into several of the site elements, and even a little bit on the interior as well. The west facade of the service center, again, the shaping of the public the meeting rooms that are there, kind of as appendages that jut out. but really focusing on controlling solar gain, which, as we all know, also contributes to energy use. So the building orientation has been angled, and then those larger rooms have also been angled even further, so that come 4 o'clock in the afternoon, they're not seeing the solar gain until then as well. So it encourages blinds to be open, daylight to be harvested, as opposed to just having to close them pretty much all day, as you do with your west-facing facade right now. And another rendering here just kind of starts to show the commitment to, from the public entrance. I shouldn't say the public, but from the staff entrance into the facility. So this is the north end of the service center. So this is primarily where staff enter, and it's also the connection between the service center and the maintenance building. Just a little bit of a focus, a zoomed-in component of that north entrance where the majority of the staff would enter. Primary entrance where public would come in. Again, the idea that we have commitment to covered bicycle parking as well. And then you can barely see it, but there's a little path here off to the left that also connects up to the bus stop as well. So we're encouraging folks to use public transportation to come to this facility and be directed right to the main entrance. One of our designers really liked this one. It was a passion project, but it starts to show the concept as to how we're capturing rain off of the roof is the design of an integral gutter system that directs the flow of water. And you can see it here in this rendering that we're basically taking a scupper into an integral gutter and bringing it down to the ground where it is then incorporated into the bioswales. Next one is just a view of basically the northwest corner of the service building, and it really highlights one of the teaming spaces on the interior, which is just here, and then off to the left is a view of into the cafe. So the idea that the the staff break room has direct access to that incredible view out towards Clear Creek, and a little bit of an outdoor patio, kind of similar to being able to use what you have outside here. Really stepping back kind of into the parking lot, the staff parking lot, to see what their view would be as they approach the two buildings. So very direct access, service building on the left, maintenance building on the right. A little bit different perspective is maybe as you're crossing the pedestrian, it's a light pedestrian bridge over the bioswales, so you actually walk through the bioswales, a view of the maintenance building itself. And again, the lab in this facility is located right here, so there would be dedicated kind of lab parking up front for folks who need to come and use the lab, or drop off samples rather. Also, a little bit of a view from staff parking again of the maintenance building. And here we're primarily proposing precast concrete. We've also looked at other options, but as of right now, we're looking at primarily precast panels, brick, more standard metal panels, and then some translucent panels for daylighting into the facility as well. But even in the service area, again, trying to get some natural, not service, in the large warehouse area, little punched openings that do allow daylight into the storage area as well. And then just a little bit of a view that is if you are standing closer into the riparian buffer, looking back towards the building, is seeing the maintenance building on the left and the service building on the right. And then basically also showing how we are proposing to traverse these bioswales. They're, from a topography standpoint, barely 20 inches off the ground here, so they're very safe. The design of them is certainly wheelchair friendly. We wanted to avoid the use of railings, which are a maintenance issue. They're also unsightly, so on and so forth. And really, it gives you the feel that you're walking through the natural landscape. But understanding that the bioswales are predominantly dry, and in that sense is that we are incorporating natural limestone rock as well. And then a couple of views within the actual maintenance facility itself. Again, looking back on the maintenance building in the background, you can see the commitment to daylighting with the large translucent panels up top, and then the precast down low. We are showing how the covered parking bays may also work, and a little bit of a hint as to how we'd do some of that rainwater capture and storage there as well. On the right is the optional truck wash, and again, sized for your large vehicles with kind of an internal elevated catwalk, if you will, to be able to get up high and spray your trucks down in that sense. And then just another view kind of into the yard, seeing the 3 large parking structures, and then off to the right, behind a separate secure fence, is your supply, your secure supply storage as well. We have a series of interior renderings, and Brandy, do you want to just say a few things? Just introduce yourself first.
Absolutely. I am Brandy Haney, interior designer out of the Indianapolis office for Champlin Architecture. And before we go through this series of interior renderings, really just kind of want to put out a blanket statement that these renderings are really designed to convey the overall design intent, not necessarily exact finishes, exact methodologies of construction. It is really used to communicate the overall vibe and the story that we want to tell using these renderings. So this one up first would be as you are entering the main entrance to the service center on the east facade of that building, welcoming into obviously the City of Bloomington logo there, and just really communicating the first thing that you see and the story that we want to tell as we travel through this building would be the use of those natural materials, right? The use of some greenery, some wooden elements, some of those natural colors, and really using the daylight to communicate through the space and really to capture that essence as we move through.
And Brandy, before we go on to the next one,
Yep.
Also off to the left here is the immediate access for customer service.
It is, thank you.
So there's the commitment to windows, walk-up windows. There's also the ability to be taken into a conference room immediately, understanding that that your service to your customers is also key.
Thank you for that, Sean. Yeah. Next one would be as you are kind of standing there entering that service center building, kind of turning off to the right-hand side, going down what we are considering kind of the more public-facing corridor of this space. As you enter off here would be entrances to the training room and the boardroom. Noting again, pulling in more of those elements, using kind of this preliminary or primary space through this front corridor here as kind of your means and methodology for travel, and then having kind of a side area for collaboration, communications, impromptu conversations as they would happen throughout the space. Next one here, we have a shot of what your boardroom could look like, noting the use obviously of kind of the blue theme, right, with water. Having this boardroom be in a space where you definitely are capturing a lot of that natural daylight is very important. Using different acoustical methodologies and finishes here to really make sure there's an acoustical balance when you are having those meetings. So it's not too much reverberation, but not too quiet and too echoey and so forth.
And doing it in a fiscally responsible way. This proposed room obviously is very voluminous, but the balance of finishes are very appropriate for the space. The big item here is also that you don't have right now is the opportunity to open up your boardroom to serve even larger functions. So the connectivity to the training room, which is to the left, and the boardroom creates an opportunity to have well over 100, I think it's 120 or so people in a single room at any given time.
Actually, I think it's more than that. I think
It
it's
might
like
be more.
130. But, and what we didn't mention quite yet here is that, and you can kind of see where my cursor is hovering, this rendering currently is showing the operable partition that would be dividing the boardroom from the training center as fully open. So you're kind of getting a snapshot of what that training center kind of looks like off to the left there. This next rendering is a area where, you know, as you are traveling through the building, right, as folks come through, and whether this is visitors, if you all are bringing them through the site, this would be a wall that you all would see pretty regularly on a day-to-day basis. This is capturing kind of the essence of what the main corridor on the backhand side of the building would look like, and using this really as an opportunity to do something more than just a white wall, right? This wall that you're seeing here is approximately, I would say, 20 feet in height, knowing that this is an opportunity to really tell that story about sustainability, using those materials, capturing that space, and using it for something more than just empty wall space.
And if I could also add, Brandy, we've been encouraged, right? And we're only at 50% PD,
Right.
and that's part of the thing going forward. We have been encouraged to look at other options for this, and that would absolutely be something as we move forward. But the concept is that it is an important wall. We want to make sure that we're sustaining. So I think we talked about, you know, maybe layering in some componentry that is, if we're going to do a living wall, maybe it's truly living,
Yeah.
as opposed to something that is kind of I don't know, secured or whatever. It's
Right.
But in that sense, the idea, as Brandy mentioned, this is an area that really contributes to the quality of the workplace, the volume, the daylight, and then the opportunity to tell a great story on this wall.
And I want to emphasize here again, what you're seeing is an intent, right? It's a basis of design, not saying that it would exactly look like this with this exact type of material and this exact type of planting, right? It is used to communicate kind of the vibe and the character that we envision in this space. Next would be interior workspaces. So kind of knowing that a lot of the backside, and I'm going to say, workspaces, interior private offices and workstations are spread throughout, right? There's a good dichotomy of a lot of private offices mixed in with a lot of workstations that are, you know, more heads down, knowing that this would be your kind of primary travel corridor on the backhand side. What you're seeing here are private offices that have, and you can do it a couple different ways, won't get into all the details, right? But interior storefront, there's also some different methodologies that we could use as far as, you know, how do we accomplish this goal with furniture? There's a lot of different ways that we could do that. But the overall idea is that you kind of have this repetition of private office banks with kind of your neighborhoods of workstations clustered in the middle using different departmental groupings.
The other thing that this does is it blends kind of the architecture and the interiors in the sense that it is celebrating an openness as opposed to hard ceilings that bring down the scale. We're also giving, you know, pockets, as Brandy mentioned, these pockets also frame views to the exterior as well, because you know, the view towards the west, towards Clear Creek, is something that should indeed be celebrated, you know, for staff and really enhance the quality of the environment. And what we haven't fully, completed here is how does the ductwork run? That's part of it that we would continue to figure out. But largely the idea that that this space is as voluminous as possible and not so closed in and confined.
Yeah. And one more thing I just want to touch on real quick, celebrating those exterior views, Sean, like you mentioned, noting that almost all of the workstations that you see in the floor plans here do have that direct connectivity to where the exterior, you know, that glazing would be to provide that connection. This is a rendering that we've done of the interior cafe in the service center there. So as you walk in, you know, a nice spacious island with a kind of right now we have just a graphic representation of an option for the backsplash. Just kind of noting this as, you know, there are many different options that we could do here. This kind of was an idea of how can we take water and celebrate it, right? So this was almost an idea that I came up with about, you know, how do we take that glass, and it's really a bubble diagram, kind of blown up and pixelated and used as almost like a back painted glass. Again, that's not set in stone. That is just an idea to kind of show you the design intent and how we really want to play up the colors and the vibrancy and celebrate water, which is what you guys are all about. Another thing this does, and not showing any upper cabinets, as you know, we tend to see that once those upper cabinets get up there, people start storing a lot of stuff on top of them. They get dirty, they get messy, and so providing that nice, crisp, clean background is another way to kind of celebrate that cleanliness of that. Obviously, great exterior views. You can kind of see here, this would be the connector where you all would have this exterior kind of platform and terrace to celebrate out. So that's really it.
Somehow the rendering package on my laptop is missing the floor plans. If you go back.
Oh, it is.
You probably saw them as you flipped through.
That's a good.
Let's hit those as well.
Let's hit those. That would be nice.
They're not on here, but we can certainly talk through them, pull these up.
Yep.
The overall orientation, as you remember last time, after certainly several meetings with the ADs and then also as select staff members, basically breaks this down into your primary departments with customer service. You've got finance, environmental, engineering, and then obviously administration. And so the understanding how those folks work, basically quiet, more quiet to less quiet in terms of the relationship. But we kind of did these as bubbles because it's seen, as Randy mentioned, as being basically a neighborhood in that sense. Can you pull the site plan up too?
I absolutely can.
It's basically they're seen as neighborhoods. The idea that each of these spaces, as we went through the programming components, is each of the ADs identified their anticipated growth, and then on top of that, after our last conversation with you, we reevaluated some of the commitment to space that was up in this area, and we further densified the layout of the floor plan. And all in all, we have built into the service center about a 34-35% built-in growth opportunity. So you're not just building a building day one, plan for 5 years of growth, and then what do you do from there? So there are areas that are designated in darker grays as components that are above what was identified by the ADs as their projected growth for the near future. So there is that opportunity of flexibility and the idea that they can plug and play in between. So if one department is growing faster than the other, they can indeed plug into an adjacent neighborhood and not have to completely reconfigure in that fashion. Again, the overall commitment, between the boardroom and the training room is something that I think gives you an incredible amount of flexibility. The size and capacity that can handle is certainly something. We also evaluated that front corridor. There was a concern previously for the commitment of space. We have refined that some. We still believe that based on being able to flex out of those rooms, take a call, as opposed to having to have another dedicated room, that having some public space up front there to do that makes sense. But it has been evaluated and reduced just a little bit. A couple of the other things that we did, of course, was really truly to try to understand the primary circulation of your staff from a cleaning standpoint. The commitment, as Brandy was mentioning, to materials. Basically, this entire racetrack, if you will, is seen in doing a polished concrete. Well, not too dissimilar to what you have out here, but something that's easily cleaned in that sense. And we've taken a look at the acoustical overhead to help break down that echo as well. But I think that, from an overall standpoint, we also worked closely with the ADs, and you'll see that that there are individual areas within each of the departments that have continued to be refined from our last conversation together. The idea that the customer service does have that forward-facing component to very easily receive mail in that sense, to very easily bring in and interface with customers if they need to, pull them into a dedicated conference room and not have to get folks deep into the space. So we're trying to definitely have that differential between public and private, if you will, in all of that. So that's the service center. On the maintenance facility, as you recall the last time, we have a warehouse that is significantly larger than the one that you have here in terms of, I think it ended up being around 40 to 50% larger than what you currently have, so it increases your opportunity for internal storage. We also grew the meter shop and the maintenance shop as well, based on the conversations, and again, adjusting for capacity. There are a few other components between the offices and secure storage within each of those spaces. The laboratory, as we mentioned, does have a place for for your lab office and a couple of assistants as well, and then basically two full lab areas. The T&D was originally, I think, anticipated to go in the service center, but after talking, it makes sense to have T&D closer to the maintenance building. So their entire group is situated here next to their ready room, which has direct access to the outside of the parking or obviously inside the facility. The other thing I do want to point out is we have planned for a mezzanine, and part of that is to pull in the 2,000 square feet or so storage that you have off-site right now. So that is built into this project as well. And then there's also surplus space in that mezzanine for future opportunity for storage. We've identified, working closely with staff, is understanding what is the commitment to some of your most expensive pieces of equipment, and particularly the ones that have water and have to have them indoors. And so we've articulated how that circulation can indeed go. A couple of your vac trucks stack on this side, and then the balance of your larger trucks can be parked in the middle. So the circulation, very easy. They pull in, park, pull out, and circulate all the way around. I think it's actually backwards. This should be turned. The flow is they come in, they wash, then enter the building in this capacity, park, and leave. So it's the same concept. I just had it backwards because we've gone back and forth on that a couple of times, I think, in that sense. Supply is located, and communication. So one of the last times we had communications, it was kind of tucked in this corner, and there were some comments about security, and was that the best place for them? We pulled them a little bit more into the secure area, have them on an exterior wall, but since they're in the secure area, inside the secure fence and not on the perimeter, it's actually seen as something that's very, very positive in that sense. Supply having direct access to a loading dock. It is a covered dock, but direct access to a receiving area. You can break down your packaging and then ultimately get it directly into the warehouse. So this portion, since our last conversation together, has also changed just a little bit, based a little bit more on some of the staff's feedback as well, and feel that it's really improved as well. So those are the floor plans, and I think that that's pretty much everything that we had to present. I do want to end with this is, as I was mentioning a second ago, Chris also said 50% DD is a good jumping off point. You haven't gone too far that you're overly committed, and if there are some revisions, either it's staff or yourselves that we should take a look at, it's easily integrated. If we were at 100% CDs, probably not. It'd certainly be an expense in that sense. But there is flexibility in that sense. So we feel that where we're at. We also delivered three DD drawing packages. So there is a full site development package, and then each of the buildings has its own drawing package as well. We also delivered a LEED summary. We are currently tracking very high silver or low gold when it comes to commitment to LEED certification. So we're tracking very well on those commitment to those sustainability initiatives as well. So we turned that in. We also had HEBE do a life cycle cost analysis. We evaluated 2 systems for the service building. Each of them had an option to add geothermal. And so with that, there was a life cycle cost that showed, yes, there is one system that's less expensive day one, but if you do something else, there's a life cycle payback to consider there. So that would be a major decision once this project ramps up and we move forward with finalizing DD and moving into CDs. So there is even that flexibility as to a different system, whether it's DX-type rooftops, DOAS-type units, and a couple of air handlers versus water source heat pumps would be the two systems. Pairing geothermal with them both make sense, but there is definitely an articulable difference between the two in terms of long-term payback. So that has also been delivered to staff as well. I think that's
There's also furniture in there too.
furniture package, also included in our full fees. I don't think it was technically included in our DD, but we did it anyway. We coordinated with a furniture company, so we have delivered a full proposed furniture plan for the entire facility and a cost assessment with that. So there are floor plans and costs that are associated with that. Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah.
Of that, Brandy. So it should give a really good understanding as to where the building components come in. Chris?
Yeah. So I know that we just have a lot of other things to talk about tonight, so I'm going to be quick. But President Parmenter has a summary of what this all cost. And what I just real quickly want to run through it out of respect to time. I think so. Going back to what I showed to the group in November, we gave some different scenarios where if you do it in 2023, 2024, 2025, we had some variables and escalators into that. So where we are today, just run through with site budget, we're about $12.5 million. The maintenance building is running around $19 million, and the surface building is $13 million. All in with that, put you at $45 million. One thing I want to highlight is there is a 10% contingency built into this number. So there's $4.5 million of unassigned dollars that are within this package right now that are available. Just because, as Champlin said, there's a lot of unknowns that are out there right now. There's a lot of give and takes. If you so choose, we can dive into this at another time and go through the budget in a deep dive so you all can have a better understanding of what that represents. But we do have a list of alternates, what that can be removed from the project to bring the cost down if you so choose. But what that number represents that's in front of you is all in, all the bells and whistles. That's the geothermal, as Sean mentioned. That's the lab, the water testing lab that was originally isolated, not part of the project. That's the increased site. That's everything that through the programming we heard the staff say that they wanted. So that's your baseline. Now there are costs associated with the FF&E, as Sean mentioned, the furniture, soft costs and whatnot. But to build that building, construction costs, that's where you are. So in terms of talking rate case or moving forward, whatever you choose to do beyond today, that's where we are based on what you see. Now, I do want to add the caveat that nothing's getting cheaper. So every year that goes by, obviously there is an escalator that needs to be added. Right now we're carrying about 6% per year that we throw on there that the cost goes up. So if you take 6% times $45 million, that's expensive. So it will never be cheaper than it is today, and that's with anything, not just this building, that's with construction in general. Happy to answer any questions, happy to get out of your way, but that's our presentation for the evening for the new service building.
Thank you both. Thank you all three so much. Thank you. Do we have any questions today? There's a lot to take in and consider. Okay, we'll start here with Matt. Yeah.
Thank you, and I also have to step out in just a few minutes for a meeting at 6, but thank you so much for the presentation. Was I understanding correctly with respect to the geothermal, water source, air source heat pumps, are all options then gas-free in terms of the thermal properties, so space and water heating, but different options, is that right?
I don't believe we have gas on this site.
There's
all electric.
Okay, just wanted to verify. Thank you.
Is it?
Yep.
I had a question about the issue of heat in the summer with the sunlight focus. Is there shade plan or has that been considered?
There would be, certainly, and you can see that in the floor plan. But as importantly, as we started to rotate, as we started to understand and study the solar gain on this building, we have this rotated so it's about 2:30, 2 o'clock to 2:30 before sun would even start to hit this secondary facade. Morning sun from a solar gain standpoint isn't as intense from a heat standpoint, the temperature hasn't really risen. We do need to be concerned for glare and things of that nature. But the solar gain components on the west facade are primarily dealt with from the angle of the building. You can see even with these components here, we've angled them even more to the point where it's about 4 o'clock in the summer before they start seeing daylight, which is towards the end of your day. But yes, any good building is going to have a commitment to shades on the interior. We should just to take the glare down and things of that nature. The other thing that, and it's less of a concern here, but you know, some of the public space up front is that if you do have staff working a little bit later at nighttime, in the winter, it gets darker early, and when you're illuminated on the interior, you can kind of see in. And so the idea that shades also serve the factor of controlling views into the facility at night if you do have staff working late. In the winter, anyway. In the summer, it's probably not too big of a deal, as bright as it is outside. But yes, we will have those controls as well.
I have a second question. I think in the other meeting we had talked about the need for a gender neutral locker room area, and I saw there's a gender neutral restroom in this building, but it is not near the locker rooms, and it doesn't have a shower or anything. So I think that's missing.
You may have missed the shower, and the restrooms are oversized, and it may not be showing, but the intent was to have, I believe, a wardrobe type unit in there so that they could indeed, have some supplies that they could change in that sense. But we did miss the
Yeah, the
request for the
closest
shower.
one is in the middle of this area
Yeah.
and not near the other locker rooms.
Yeah. These locker rooms, we did end up changing kind of the flow, so they're directly off you, but we are missing, and I think at one point we may have had, I know it was, we had a respite room in there.
There are 2 gender neutral restrooms right
With
now
no
that are
lockers or showers.
correct. That are associated by the cafe, but not by the locker room. Correct.
But I think to your point, is working that into the locker room area over the main.
And with the shower.
Makes sense. In the
You know,
shower.
with all the
In the shower.
amenities there. Yeah.
Totally.
Jeff?
Sure. Well, I'm very impressed with the plans and being able to, like, from the interior shots, find myself and see where that is in the building, and having all the different views is really helpful. And yeah, it's a little overwhelming. So I've never done this before, exactly, right? I don't even know what DD stands for.
Oh, I'm sorry. We use acronyms in all.
And CD, DD and CD.
SD, DD, CD, bidding, CA. So SD, schematic design. We started actually with programming, which would be DD, preliminary design, where we went through the process of going through a number of meetings with leadership and staff on all of the components that they felt needed to be in this project. We did some high-level planning. We did a lot of research. That was primarily the preliminary design component, understanding the site and the building programs. Schematic design is where we start to give it a little bit of shape, a little bit of form, and so that is where we get a little bit, further down the road, but it's still very, very conceptual. DD stands for design development, where we are really starting to refine our ideas, the integration of systems and components, and that's what really drove the integration of the site with the buildings is deep into DD.
This is the result of DD, right?
That is. So we are 50% of the way through the design development process, which means we anticipate some continued revisions prior to entering CDs, which are construction documents, which will ultimately be used, Weddle will use to procure bids on your behalf. CA, which is the very end, is construction administration. That's after it's gone through bidding. The contracts have been awarded and it is in construction.
Thank you for
All
that.
these acronyms.
I appreciate it. No, that's great. So you mentioned the interaction with the assistant directors and even lower level staff to understand the requirements, and I think I had concerns about the original master plan, and but they had documentation. So I'm wondering, is there a report that accompanies this document where?
We can add it to this. That was a delivery back in January or so. But we can supplement it and include it in this, absolutely. Yes.
Digitally is.
Yeah.
fine. I
Yeah.
just would like to see
We
that.
can do that digitally. But it basically is an Excel spreadsheet that breaks down the individual spaces. And at the time that it was done, it projects things like your circulation, like your mechanical space, because we hadn't gone through and done the sizing of all of the equipments and really truly understand at the time, like, for example, the number of restrooms that you needed, things of that nature.
But it was based on the collaboration with staff?
Very much so.
Okay.
Yes.
And you said since that time you've tweaked things on.
We have.
further-
We've continued to look at things. For example, with each of the departments, we sat down and went through, a number of private offices versus open spaces. We went through the size of them and manipulated and changed those around a little bit based on final layouts. And so that very much drove the size of the building, the components within each of the spaces. Part of it was also spending time touring and walking through very detailed operational components, particularly in your maintenance facility, understanding that meter shop is a bit confined. And we talked about their need for space and their need for offices in that sense, a couple of offices. So it was it was more than just sitting around a table and talking. It was getting up, walking around, observing, and even coming back a number of times as we get into the plans, there'd be a couple more comments. Well, let's get up and go look at that, right? And so we were validating, we continued to validate as we went through the entire process. But we can turn around and take that Excel program and layer it into this. It's very easily done.
And I just wanted to point out really quickly, we even got to a point where if you look on that board, there are names associated with
Oh.
staff members. We got
Saw
down
that.
into that level of what makes the most sense for
We were
efficiencies.
testing.
We were
Sure.
testing, but yes, just to verify that number.
Yeah. Looking down the hallway, there was said future, but there was a guy sitting there, so I guess we're already there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, and the guy's computer screen showed the same view as.
Yeah.
Fun. Anyway, has staff seen the same presentation? Because I'm looking out and seeing very few people. Yeah. Okay. I figured that was the case. Okay. That's all my questions for right now. Thanks.
And some of those, for example, customer service, I think it went through more changes than any of the departments as we really understood interaction with, with potential interaction with the public and how even that department may work with finance and stuff and making sure that it wasn't cut off. So we had some very detailed conversations and even the point to the fact that they're on the phone a lot. And so how do we compartmentalize them without necessarily doing private offices and things of that nature? So we had some very detailed conversations with staff.
And you still have the security where of that one conference room that people can go into
Very
one
much
door,
so.
but the other door's
Very much so.
locked. Yeah, I saw
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Great.
Other questions?
I think I have a couple. Great job, by the way.
Well, thank you.
I see a couple enviro storage spaces in the service center, but I don't see any at the maintenance facility. Am I overlooking that?
So we do have, some treatment storage, we have some green infrastructure storage immediately accessible off of these areas. So they're definitely there. The warehouse is actually, pretty significant as well. We have some of this racking that's dedicated purely for larger meter shop storage as well. So there is significant flexibility. Am I missing anything there?
No.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, the interior workspaces, has there been any thought or consideration about sound transferring over to other spaces and things like that?
Yeah, I think that's part of what's the further development past DD, but what we're looking at conceptually, because we do have, again, we have carpet, we have acoustical spray, anticipated acoustical spray on the underside of the deck above, as well as there is a little bit of a buffer. There can be sound if you have someone who's being pretty boisterous. It can indeed wrap around. Sound will take the path of least resistance, just like water, in that sense. But the idea that we are going to treat the underside of that deck helps bring down that reverberation. So this is a modified open office environment. So your Private offices absolutely have that acoustical separation, but rather than take the walls all the way up and have some, have that feel of a little bit more openness, could sound go up and over? Yes, absolutely. It could also wrap around, and unless we completely wall things off, the sound's going to go where it wants to go. But the inclusion of potentially some white noise componentry within the space, could help also control that. You're running about I think somewhere around a 35, 65, 40, 60 split of private office to open office. So it's still, in terms of office environments, I don't want to say dense, but it is a little more dense than what a typical office would be. We have some customers, energy providers like yourselves, that if this were their facility, they'd have maybe 5 offices, if that, in the entire space. Huddle rooms, right? Breakout spaces, but the balance of it would be open. So we're comfortable and familiar with the open office environment, how to treat that, but it's a great question, and we did talk about whether or not those walls should go up or not, and it's still an option. It's still certainly an option. Okay.
Yeah, no, I just would add that a lot of our conversations, I'd say a lot of our comments did center around how to move the spaces to where there would be the least amount of sound interruptions, especially for those in workstations.
Thank you.
Big picture, I talked the last time about the floodplain, and I think you may have that here on the vegetation slide. When you worked with the civil engineering firm, did you look at, I go beyond 100-year floods these days, but we never want to be in a spot where we got water lapping up against the back door here.
Totally agree. We are just around 10 feet above floodplain at this point. And so I think whether or not Bledsoe feels that would or has been reached, I think is a follow-up question that we should get you. But
10 feet horizontal,
vertical.
10 feet vertical.
Vertical.
Any structures above 10 feet vertical that have a floodplain.
So the buildings, yes. So we have the topography, and you can kind of see it there.
You
The
said we
white,
have 22 feet total. Somebody said at the beginning of the
22 to 30 feet from the east side of the site. So the white lines on here are the topographies, and so there is in that range of 20, I think it's 22, 24 feet of fall from east to west to where we have set the building lines, and then there's an addition. There's that 8 feet that gets you down to the floodplain. So the building finished floor plans are right at, I believe it's 10 feet above where the floodplain is. So the 2 dashed lines that you see there are 2 different interpretations of the flood. One is actually the FEMA mapped line, and the other one is more existing topography based in that sense. So from a verticality standpoint, we are significantly higher than floodplain. But let us circle back and see if Bledsoe has ever or will ever anticipate that, based on recent events or not so recent events, that it would get there. So let me follow up with that.
Yeah, we look at those other places where we have urban flooding
Yes.
in the community. It wouldn't be good for us to do that to our own building.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, I think it's fair to say that that's an easy adjustment, especially when you're putting your foundations. If they do find out that I think it's cutting it too close, you can raise it pretty easy. That wouldn't be a super challenge on this project.
Well, that's what we've seen over, the development of our community is we've got increasing amounts of storm drainage that we didn't have 50 years ago, and we'd want this building to last longer than that. Growth's going to continue, although I will say that a lot of folks are working to capture, and that's part of the city master planning and community master planning, to capture runoff from impervious surfaces. We need to, of course, continue to promote that, but know that we're still going to get there, you know.
Part of what also may help tell that story is we do have what we call a heat map that shows cut fill on this site. So it does show how we're cutting into the east. We're still cutting to the east. We're just not placing a building down in it. But we are, and we're also building up as we get to the west. So I think that might also help tell
Okay.
the story of how we're, our level of confidence with the, versus the floodplain. But help me remember, let's make sure we circle back on that question.
And then my other question is about how we've decided to handle customer service for in-person customers that would want to interact with us. What's been the guidance and design on that? I may have missed the detail on that.
So it's primarily, one of the things I think that was discussed is that there would be potentially a rotating staff member that would be pulled from any of the departments. So there's not any department that is assigned the full-time or even hiring a full-time receptionist out front. But the idea that there's an opportunity to have that receptionist, should you decide to open up and receive staff now that we're through COVID, all that good stuff. But the idea that they could be received there and then also have a direct walk-up window, so immediately have that conversation, and if needed, be pulled into the conference room for a deeper conversation. And that's primarily how that interaction has occurred. Certainly have some of the overflow components. It's, the larger conference room, or if you have a small group or so, to be able to pull into the training room or whatever, this conference room in that sense is certainly there as well.
So we've got a vestibule there at the main entrance.
Yes.
It's this drawing here behind Sean.
Yeah, here we go. There we go. I'm kind of in the light.
Yeah. So our current plan is to have that vestibule open so that public can enter there. They'd go to the reception area right there and ask their question. If they needed customer service, they'd go to the window there on the left.
Correct.
Okay.
And if they needed a deeper conversation, to pull into the private conference room that's just here off the main hallway.
Okay. It looks to me like they would have access then to the rest of the building down to your doorway there by administration.
There would be the secure corridor would be here
Okay.
to here. So
All right.
that, for example, contractors have pre-bid meetings quite a bit with staff. The idea that they could have access to this conference room that would be set up, for pre-con and stuff, and not have to fill into your larger spaces that could be used for training. Having access for public restrooms as well off the main corridor was seen as being important as well.
So from the staff perspective, we're not really able to accommodate that right now, but this design would do that. Is that where we're headed?
Correct. Yeah.
It would give us the flexibility.
Okay. Thanks.
Yeah, great.
Thank you. Other questions? David?
Will you be building a new bus shelter part of the project?
Sure, it'd be required planning.
I think so.
David?
That's they call it add-on, change order.
Well, that's one of those.
That's the beauty of where we are right now. You can incorporate it into the 50%, and it's not very impactful if you do it at this time. But I think, the thing is that we have to meet code with all the city planning requirements, so covering bike parking, if there's a bus shelter that's asked for. This would be the time to go back and start having those conversations, then find out what their needs are to meet their requirements for planning and incorporate it.
It'd be good for this neighborhood.
You talked to planning yet?
We had. We did have a conversation with them, and largely very supportive did have some feedback, and you know, even with the design, there are components on the west side, and so there's a conversation that still needs to occur. There are portions of this maintenance building on the west side that we are trying to be more economical than I think that they would want us to be in terms of the aesthetic of the exterior. And so there was a comment about about maybe enhancing that west facade a little bit. We, at this point, we took that under advisement, shared that with leadership and staff, and at this point, decided not to necessarily respond to that, knowing that we had a bigger conversation also as the rest of us coming up. And certainly not saying that we can't or won't. It's just making sure that we're taking things in advisement, but understanding that we're meeting their their commitments. There was a conversation about drive versus road, and if it's a road, then it triggers certain things. And as of right now, this is your property. It is a drive in that sense. So there was conversation about the corridor, the transportation corridor, and that there was master plan to be in a certain location, understanding that that was flexible. So there was some conversation regarding that as well. But again, largely positive in the conversations.
Why would anyone care about the west side of that building? You cannot see it from the rail trail. You cannot see it from anything. You cannot see that from anywhere.
So Brandy's in the
So why is that an issue?
And we brought and that's why we were of the opinion at this point, we're going, let's take things under advisement and have that conversation. But I did mention that.
I mean, if it costs a lot more money.
Make that aesthetically pleasing.
Build anything between.
No one's going to build down there.
And we did point that out, that you'd have to be in like a kayak or something, and then you probably still can't see it.
Probably still
through
can't see
the
it.
vegetation, things of that nature. But again, in overall, the conversation was largely positive. We did have REA on the line. We had Bledsoe Riggard, Andy, BRCJ in the room, so we were fully represented in that, in just that informational conversation.
Other questions from anybody else? All right, I have several questions. Well, first of all, again, thank you so much for all your time and effort on this. I know you're hearing from us today, and we're like nitpicky about little things and not complimentary about everything and all of the work that you have done. So thank you for all that. These, the photographs really help visualize everything. For me, seeing the entrance and seeing a welcome desk and being our customers are greeted by someone, that's very important. And then they can be directed to the service window or elsewhere in the building. And so visually, this helps a lot for understanding. So just several questions. I heard mentioned concrete, and I guess that's probably much more cost effective than like limestone for this. Yes. Okay. I'm like on the champagne budget taste on the beer, on that other budget. So anyway, I just wondered how far is the southern portion of the building off of Gordon Pike in that one corner that corners out?
That's a great question. I think it's about 50 feet.
Okay,
40,
it
40
looks
feet.
quite
That might be
close.
Probably
I know
close to
you'd
40.
mentioned about the bioswale and directing the water that way, so I just want to make sure we have room to direct it not into Gordon Pike.
Yes.
Okay.
We do there. And interestingly enough, and I may have mentioned this the last time we got together, the city of Bloomington zoning requirements, setbacks and everything are much different than a lot of communities. Here it's kind of, you can't do more than amount of parking, where in most communities it's, you must do this minimum amount of parking. The setbacks actually encourage the creation of more of an urban, streetscape feel. So having that flexibility to get that building there. But yes, from a drainage standpoint, we're in good shape.
Okay, thank you. And then I just wondered, and I'm sorry, I've probably asked this before, but have you toured like other newly built utility buildings or talked with people that have just gone through this process? And is there something that once they've gotten in there, they wish they would have put in? Is that anything?
So in terms of touring, say, other water utility buildings recently, no. But the number of utility buildings, say for energy service providers, we've done several.
Okay.
And there are always best practices that come out of it. And one of the comments that we did react to pretty strongly is the idea is there a densification plan for this interior that gives you a greater opportunity for internal growth without having to turn around in 5-10 years and do an addition. So that is something that a lot of clients would like to aspire to do. Having this built in your service building, in your maintenance building, I think is very thoughtful. So you're not just having to repeat a rate case, understanding you have a commitment to the community, repeat a rate case for an addition or something down the road.
Okay, thank you. My next question, I think these were just comments that I had made the last time that I didn't see in here, so I'm just going to say them again. And I'll say that I don't work here every day, so I know if that's not something that you all think is needed, then that's fine. But I would think there should be a covered walkway between the service center and the maintenance building. I think that there should be like a water fountain or a sink in the boardroom to like wash your hands or fill up this nice pitcher that Frank has for us. And the lab is part of the option that you've included in the price. And I noticed that it is still completely disconnected from the maintenance facility, and I feel like there should be some connectivity to that building. And I mean, I looked at it and like, well, can't put there, so I understand that. But just knowing that the folks who work in there would have to, really go quite around, and if it's a rainy day, are there sidewalks that would connect them there, or they got to go back out to the parking lot and beyond. So those are just 3 things I noticed. And then my last question would be for Chris. So how long is that $45,723,123.25 bid good for? I know obviously we are at the question phase, not ready to commit to anything. And so, what's our next timeline here?
So that number represents what we believe today the cost is. That's the contingency built in. But every year, so going into 25, we would add approximately 6% to that value. And
So like January 1,
well,
there's
there's not a hard stop at
okay.
January 1.
You would just kind of reassess.
Yeah,
at
you
that
just
time.
have to keep looking. But
Okay.
one thing, the significance that some labor rates, the contracts change annually. They get their annual increases. So that's one thing to consider. What if it's signatory shops, carpenters, laborers, operators, whatever that might be, pipe fitters. They typically at the first of the year their wages go up. Materials again, everything's costing more money. So there's no hard set like if you do it by this day, you can guarantee that price. The only thing I can guarantee you is the longer that you wait, the more expensive that it will be. And I think everybody that's in the market right now sees that. And we've seen recently jobs that we put out, owners have delayed and said, let us think about it. And then when 90 days come back and say, we still had your number, we have to go back to subs and say, are you still good? Some of them, absolutely no problem. Some of them say, hey, we got to see if suppliers are still holding those numbers. So it's really subject to what the material is, what the item is. A lot of owners are taking the approach to the higher dollar equipment, whether it be your HVAC units, electrical long lead items, stuff like that. They're buying them in advance of the project even to get that, to one, beat the long lead, but 2, to also save money. Doing a project right now at IU, they ordered the air handlers long before the project even bid, just because they knew that they were going to cost a significant amount more if they waited till the project went out. So there isn't a defined answer to that, but I'm confident in saying today's numbers, likely you won't see them again.
Okay, thank you. Last question for both of you. So again, we're not signing on anything. I don't know our timeline on that, but hypothetically, if we were like today, like, yes, we're going to do it. What is that timeline as far as like we're at 50%, getting to 100%, seeing this through to breaking ground?
We have at 50% DD, we probably have about a month and a half left in that phase. Then we go through a review period again, and then have a jumping off point, and then have probably a couple of months in CD. So, 3.5, 4 months, give or take, realistic for us. in that
And
sense.
then once we get, we'll go through another version of budgeting and maybe, once as it starts to get more defined, we reach out to local contractors, we start getting real-time numbers, what are you seeing, what are the values? We'll drill it down again, we'll reduce that contingency amount. We break it up and put it out to bid. That usually takes anywhere 6 weeks approximately once we have a set issue for construction between advertising, making sure that we're doing our 2 weeks in the paper, 2 weeks online, having our pre-bid meetings, all that good stuff, then getting on the board agenda. And one thing that I will say is once it bids and you have your bid bond and they tell you this is what we'll build it for, our scope of work, at that time you have it locked in. So you can ask contractors to hold their numbers for 120 days. You can ask them to hold it longer. It's up to really however you write the scope. But once they bid it and they have that bid bond, then that that's locked in. It's not going to change. Depending on what you do, it shouldn't change, or it should change very, very.
And we have to approve other changes.
Sure, yeah.
Right. So like I said, I would highly recommend that you carry some form of contingency in the project. That's just smart to do that. What we're doing on other projects right now is there is a contingency. However, anytime that the contractor wants to use it, you go to the owner's rep and say, here's what we're getting into. They'd like to use part of their contingency allowance for it. They don't always go to the RDC or Board of Public Works, but if there's a change to contract value, where say it's $1 million, the contract value is $1 million, but they want to exceed that total contract value, that's a change order, that's approved, that's a whole other ballgame. But we're handling contingency on other projects right now, very close to change orders. There's this sent to the owner's rep, it's reviewed, and I say owner's rep, not construction manager. Somebody on the city side that's reviewing it and saying, yes, I agree with this. You are authorized to use those funds. And that's how they're handling it.
And there's one other item that I think both you and I missed, and we should talk about it, is there is permitting that has to occur as well. And there are things that we can do from, the site development package on this is at a certain point that it may be able to move a little faster because advancing the site review process, advancing that deliverable, that development approval process, getting that started sooner before we actually finish the balance of our CDs is one thing. Long lead time items, are certainly there. The structural package is actually very developed. The one area that needs more refinement of the sawtooth. Great, we have that dialed in, but it needs a little bit more detail. But the structural package can go together fairly quickly. Foundation structure that allows site foundation structural to start, but the idea that we do have to make it through, there's a 2.5, 3 month total process in there that parallels the completion of CDs as well as final pricing and all of that stuff. So that needs to be built into the overall schedule as well.
Another thing again, today, we understand that we're 50%, this is what was asked. So I think, our goal was to give you that information. We would love for you to build the building, but we also know that there's so many other factors that go into it. So this is just more of a transparency session. And if the board comes back and says, thanks for all your hard work, but just can't do it, totally get it. But I think at this point we've delivered what was asked for the 50%. Milestone,
Yes.
correct?
Thank you. So just to clarify, 2.5, 3 months for your side, 2.5, 3 months for your side.
6
but
weeks for
not,
our side.
Okay, but not concurrently.
No.
Yeah, so,
The
so
permitting
4.5 months
straddle
total, maybe.
between there, I think that's probably the 4.5
5
months.
months, okay.
I think that's fair.
That just, again, not ready to sign anything.
Yeah,
But just have an idea. I think that helps us to know, or maybe
And,
I don't know.
well, I think
Okay.
probably the most important piece of information walking out of it today, other than all of this, is my understanding is this is all based on whether or not you want to incorporate it into the rate case.
Yes.
And if you put it if you are going to put it in the rate case, you can do it this year, but you know that you're not going to do another rate case within the year. So if you don't, then you know you're pushing it out however far and however much farther. So
Right.
that was the original ask. I think when Vic was still here is, do we want to put this in the rate case or not? So this should give you the information that you need, whether or not you want to incorporate in the rate case. That was the deliverable that we were asked to do.
Yes.
And again, if it doesn't go in the rate case, I think it pushes it however far
stating, we have about a month and a half left on the DD components. And then there's the 2 or so months for CD. So total of about 3.5 months for the design completion. CD is about 2 months. Construction documents, I'm sorry. Again, acronyms, I love it. But that's where we put all of the details together, final systems and architectural details, all of that stuff. Absolutely. There's a significantly more level of detail that has to be done for constructability and pricing.
Okay, any other final questions? Okay, well, thank you all
Thank
so
you so
much
much.
for all your time, expertise, answering questions, working with our staff. Yes.
One final comment.
Yeah.
So I did look at this plan, I'm sorry, and if someone was driving over the bridge, they could look up and see that side of the building. So I have to, I'm sorry about my outburst, but,
Barely.
yeah, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Thank you.
Working with leadership and staff, and certainly your all's vision for this facility, it's safe to say that our design team was tremendously excited about the initial opportunity, and now we saw people like this, we would love nothing more than for you to do this. It is something that's certainly aspirational and a commitment to the development here in Bloomington. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And these are all yours.
Oh, great. Thank you. Okay,
I'm going to take the easels, but we'll leave the bolts.
thank you. Okay. All right, moving on with the agenda. Do we have any other petitions and communications? Okay, good. Hearing none, we have approval of our minutes from our previous meeting. Do we have any questions or corrections? Yes.
I think at our last meeting when we approved standard invoices, I think I abstained because we had an IU charge in there. Remember that? Really? I missed that. Okay, great, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions or corrections to the minutes? Okay. Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? And a second? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have approval of the claims. I do want to please note that on page 6, we have a revision to include Emmy Simpson that was not previously in there prior to today. And our total amount on our standard invoices is $937,359.36. Are there any questions? Yes, Jeff and then Molly. Sure, yes, okay.
It was not previously.
Sure,
in there.
so on page 6, let me zoom up to that.
Yeah, I see it. I'm just wondering what you meant
Oh, when, it was not in the packet,
by, with the first packet we got.
correct.
Got it. But
Emmy
it's now
Simpson,
in there.
yes,
Okay.
so, and that's for the swordfish,
Got it.
the grant funding.
And there was some confusion. We're not supposed to pay invoices until we actually have the item. And this certain vendor wouldn't ship the item until we paid them. And so last time you approved it, we actually took that payment off that claims list. And now we actually worked it out with the vendor. We have the machine in hand, and now we're going to pay them. So, yep.
Thank you. Other questions on the standard invoices? Jeff?
At the top of page 2, there's an invoice for BBC Pump and Equipment, and that's for Russell Road Lift Station, but it was billed to water. And I didn't know if there's a reason for that, but usually okay, thank you. That's, and then just generally, big picture. So we, have a lot of these invoices, and they get split 60-40 between water and wastewater. But some of them include stormwater, and they put 5% from the wastewater onto stormwater. And I still don't have a real full grasp of why certain charges have that extra split and others don't. And
We have some costs that, like the finance team is always split 40-60, but we do stormwater work too. So that's stuff that we're starting to dig into.
oh, so it is something that we're looking at
Absolutely,
and going to
yes.
address going forward. Great, okay.
Yeah, and the reason for the 60-40 split is based on revenues. And so the revenues now are looking more like 35 for water, 60 for wastewater, and 5 for storm. So.
Okay, so we should see in the future the ones that are 60-40 go to 35-65.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
That's the
you.
plan right now, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Thank you. Other questions for the standard invoices? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have utility bills in the amount of $206,869.47. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have wire transfers in the amount of $578,578.50. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Finally, we have customer refunds in the amount of $4,444.44. Are there any questions? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve? All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have approval of the consent agenda in the amount of $9,970. Catherine Sager.
Hi, good evening. I'm Catherine Sager, Assistant Director for Environmental and Interim Director. I'm presenting tonight's consent agenda totaling $9,970.00. The first one is for Commercial Service of Bloomington, Inc. for $6,970 for HVAC repairs for the service center. The second one is also to Commercial Service of Bloomington, Inc. for $3,000 for the repair of a leak in a compressor coil and to add new refrigerant to the rooftop unit at the service center. Is there any member who wishes to consider one or more of these items individually? Hearing none, if there's no opposition, these items will be approved as recommended by staff. Hearing no opposition, the consent agenda is approved.
Thank you. Next, we have requests for approval of contract for services with HEPACO LLC for removal and cleanup of aqua ammonia at Monroe Water Treatment Plant. Kat?
Hi, yes. So this contract with HEPACO would be for the cleanup of our aqua ammonia tank at Monroe. Currently, the ammonia in the tank is crystallizing and it needs cleaned out, which is causing some issues with the pumps. We recently rented some pumps from, I believe, Wessler. And to make sure that this doesn't happen to the new pumps or the pumps that we're renting, we are going to clean out that tank and flush the lines. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Also, please note that this is, when you make your motion, it is pending controller approval.
Okay. Any questions for Kat? Hearing none, do we have a motion to approve the contract for service with the HEPACO LLC for removal and cleanup of aqua ammonia at Monroe Water Treatment Plant pending controller approval?
So moved. Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Can I ask a question on that? So is the tank on the upstream side of where the new lines feed in to the plant?
Yes, I believe so.
It's like
if I understand what you're
where the stuff's
asking.
put in, and then it goes, the lines that went bad, it goes through the new lines into the plant?
Oh, these lines are different from the ones that were recently replaced, I believe.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And we don't have anyone here that can say more?
Yeah.
All right, that's fine.
Isabel.
For ammonia, and those lines, it's
Or
gonna
for
go
chlorine?
They're different.
Okay.
The ones that were installed were for chlorine and for caustic soda. no for ammonia.
Oh, these are completely different.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Okay, next we have request for approval of resolution 2024-14 to designate surplus property for auction. Matt Havey.
Yeah, so just a couple items on here. The one biggest one is a tiller. Recently purchased some new equipment at Dillman, and the old tiller doesn't fit it, and it's old. So we'd like to get rid of that. The rest of the stuff is really small, random items that people are just getting cleaned up. So I'm
Okay.
happy to take any questions about it, though.
Thank you. No questions about, I guess, Mike, is there anybody else have questions?
Well, there was a claim
Yeah.
that had, like, we bought vegetable plants. Does the
Yeah.
tiller, is it related to that in any way?
The tiller's for the drying beds.
Okay. Not specifically about this resolution, but I know we've had several others. Is there follow-up, like have things sold? Have we seen any dollars?
Probably less than $1,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
But this is the policy that we have to follow to get rid of
Correct.
the things?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. All right. So do we have a motion to approve Resolution 2024-14 to designate surplus property for auction?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next, we have old business. Is there any old business from the board? Yes.
Given the presentation and given we don't have Amanda here with her flow chart, which I would like to see right now, how are we moving forward with planning and understanding what our next steps are exactly and including understanding the financial picture? How are we going to do that as a board? And I guess the questions to staff as well, what are the board's planning steps and decisions, and then what information would be getting from staff to support that decision making?
Yeah, so I think as far as using the numbers that we've seen tonight for Winston Thomas, the next piece that we're going to need to see is from the study that Wessler's doing at Monroe to see what capital improvement projects we definitely need to include in the rate case for Monroe. Once we have that number, that'll better inform our decision whether or not we should include the Winston Thomas numbers into our rate case. And I think at that point, we would come to the board with those numbers to help make that decision.
So we'd have whatever the rate case would proposed rate increase, excluding any service center funds, and then we'd be shown this is how much more it would be if we were to include service center costs.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. And then there's the information from the city in terms of their intentions for this building, and is there any movement on that front? Is it okay to just have this conversation?
I'm fine with that.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah, so, there's been talk, at least among, Office of the Mayor and some other departments, because we're not the only department who is facing challenges when it comes to space and accommodating our staff and having a good workspace for our department. There have been some conversations around how we can coordinate all of the space needs for the city, and I'd really, it's great to have this so that we can take this and see how that plays into the greater need for the city as a whole and all of the space needs. I know that Public Works has space needs, Bloomington Transit, BPD, and BFD also have space needs. So I think the idea that looks like we might move forward with is that this is seen in a more holistic view and not just from each individual department, and seeing how we can maybe work with each other to accommodate everyone. Does that maybe make sense?
Yeah, but what about the city's proposal to pay for this building and we have some reimbursable amount to move forward with?
Right, and that would factor into it as well. That kind of factors into the how are we working together as departments to get everyone into the right space. So that would include looking at would the city pay for this? I don't know specifically I don't want to speak for the administration on that answer specifically, but that is so far where the conversations I've been a part of have been.
Yeah, what our ratepayers paid for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess my comment to that would be, I understand other departments in the city are in need of additional space, but we are paying for our own facility, and our ratepayers are paying for our facility. So I don't necessarily see how other department concerns are our concern in that picture. With that, I mean,
I absolutely understand where
Okay.
where you're going, and I
Yeah.
just I think I should clarify that the way that I envision us working together is that if you have multiple people who are doing the same thing and paying different consultants to be doing the same thing, maybe we should talk.
yeah.
Just like, how can we use what we've already gained to help each other find a space? You know, like we have this plan for Winston Thomas now. We need to be talking with other departments about, like, hey, this is the space that we're proposing that we need to take, you know?
Or even just the process, like
or
here
the
we've brought in
process.
Whittle
This is
Brothers
what
to
we've
lead
done
us
so
through the
far.
50%
Yeah.
bid and things. Yeah.
Right. Basically decreasing silos between
Okay.
departments.
Okay, I can get over that. Thank you.
Yeah.
One of the big pieces, I think, is how this would fit in the big picture is how you look at those needs that the city administration has identified, the departments that she mentioned, and this physical asset here and how they would use that, this building and our yards and so on, to solve that problem and how all this fits in the puzzle. This works, this facility we've always thought about would work well for public works. But maybe there's some other ways to split it up or whatever, and so having that holistic view that they need to work on. What the great part for us is that, you know, we're looking at it from the perspective that we need to make utilities work for the next 30 or 40 years. I've always been a little sad that we outgrew this faster than, you know, our headlights weren't longer down the highway when this was all built. Because this isn't that old, and for us to have to start over that soon, that's hindsight. I don't think the city's grown that fast, but we are growing. Anyway, the big view about how this might fit with all the other needs, because this is a nice public asset here.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And long as ratepayers are compensated for it, we're in good shape.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So, what's our timeline on the rate case then? Like, Wessler, or was it not Wessler?
We've already started it. We're waiting on the CIP report, so that we can turn that over to Crow for them to define what revenues we need.
Okay. So, like, do we have an idea of
We're
timeline?
supposed to have the CIP final by the week of July 4th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when do you expect to have information to us?
I'd have to double check with Crow, but I know that they're waiting on their CIP too, so they're done all the work that they can do.
Okay.
Up until now.
And then the information you'd bring to us would be like the two proposals.
Correct.
One here's for the water treatment plant, and this
Correct.
is to do it all.
Yep.
Okay. And then at that time, we would be able to make a decision to move forward with this or not, or a partial, since, you know, and have more guidance from the mayor and her office as well. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to us or reach out to
Yes.
Frank if you think of something, what you'd like to see and how you'd like to see it presented. That would definitely be very helpful.
Thank you.
I liked our stepwise flow chart. That was very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
think we should go back to that and maybe
Yeah.
expand it a little bit if we have extra steps that we now know about that we didn't before, or you know, lay out, put some dates on there.
Okay. Make sure
That'd be helpful.
make sure we're getting notes.
Okay. Okay, all right, thank you. Any other old business from the board? Oh, yes, please.
Megan, while you were talking about limestone,
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be kind of, if you looked at the renderings of the design, there's a couple of ways we could work limestone into this from a facade perspective that would give a nod to our community. Like at the entrance where there's the City of Bloomington Utilities, it's kind of a brown face now. You could make that limestone. And the main entrance area where the lobby is, you could make a really nice limestone facade behind that as well, either split face or whatever. We've done that on some places at IU that works pretty well, and it allows us to give that nod to the community that we're limestone's such a part of. The only other question I thought of was, have we got backup generator capability kind of planned into this? I know it's down the road, but it's a big expense, and from the electrical perspective, our control center's got to work 24/7 if the lights go out, and really a base amount of us need to be able to operate out of here as well. When bad things happen, guess who gets to respond? It's utilities. And I've seen this in my past experience, just thinking about, having electric generator backup to pump gas when you don't have electricity. Those kind of things, you got to use our imagination a little bit, but I just need to make sure that we're thinking about that as well.
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, but we can double check that backup generators were discussed as part of the planning of this facility, and specific areas would have the backup generators, such as control or the maintenance shop. I'll have to make sure that that's correct, but I know we did have a conversation around backup generators at the
You wouldn't have to
service
run the
center.
whole building, but just
Yeah.
basic services to help us operate,
Correct.
particularly, like you said, maintenance, dispatch, control center, that sort of thing.
Was there a plan for batteries for the solar? Or, because,
It's a lot of panels.
Yeah.
yeah, but, I mean, you could have some battery.
No,
right?
absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I'm totally in
Oh,
agreement. I
yeah.
was gonna say the same thing when we were talking about generators, because it's
That would be- Yeah.
the technology may or may not
You
be
could
where we
just
want
use
it to
them
be
during
right
the
now.
day and not have a battery, or you could use a battery and you wouldn't have to have a generator.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you'd want to look at the technology and see how much we could store with that many panels and how long that would, in lieu of a generator, or have a smaller generator, but it's a
Might even
lot of
get
energy
credits from-
being created there with
Yeah.
that number of panels. It's pretty amazing.
Absolutely, yeah. Really wish those guys are still here. I'm not certain what the answer is to that, but we can absolutely look. I know that they explored a lot of different options. Yeah.
An
But yes, I
option
kn-
that we would need it to, I mean, I would think that'd be an expensive option that we would need it to calculate into the numbers.
Right.
Right?
And it might be in that, like, high number.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any other old business?
Well, I'd
Yes,
like to
sorry.
just hear from your guys' opinion of working with them, and that, I want to know that your voices were indeed heard, and that indeed was a collaborative experience, because we heard from just the architect. And did you guys have any reservations at all?
Spent several days with them.
Yeah, I really think so. I myself was particular about a few things, and I really felt like they didn't let any of that go. So, I would have specific critiques about the workspaces. I had a lot of critiques about, hey, you've got a lounge area where people might be talking with elevated voices right next to some workstations. We can't have that. So they moved it. They did a lot of changes based on our requests.
Before you were acting director?
Absolutely. Yeah, before I was acting director, they had my entire environmental team come and talk about their programs and their storage needs. We walked around and looked at what was in the storage closets to see whether or not we needed them to be climate controlled, to see, they really paid attention to details, and I appreciated that.
They involved a lot of people. I mean, they took a lot of voices.
Huh.
And then Kirk, you've been in probably, I don't know, maybe other people have been involved a ton and you know, at new buildings. I don't know, but I'd imagine you might have the most experience. What did you think about the materials for 50%?
It looks good. The mistake that I think we've made from my experience in the past is sometimes we don't think big enough. We see sticker shock, and then we say, oh, God, we got to cut this, we got to cut that, we got to keep the price down, don't want to raise taxes or whatever. In the utility business, you can't do that anymore. You know, we see all kinds of examples of that. But I think they've done a good job, and we'd be short-sighted to start making cuts. That's my first take on all this.
And there's cost savings built into it with the green infrastructure, which
Yeah,
is really nice
that's great.
for the future to consider.
Any other comments on that? Any?
You know, Seth runs a building, so the further we get along with this, you just put a brand new building online, and the kind of things you've seen come up that nobody thought of, that's really going to be important here. So, hey, be thinking about it. And then the little things like how to balance all the airflows and, you know, silly things like why did we put the sprinkler systems on outside walls that freeze? You know, sometimes we just don't think about that till they freeze. And, yeah.
I would say I think there was a really good attention to detail. One specific moment that I remember was that someone had brought up in my team that, hey, I walk into my office and sometimes I'm coming from a very muddy field. And so they changed the design to accommodate a boot cleaning area so that people could clean their boots before coming into the office spaces. So I just really appreciated that they took each of these things very seriously.
The office spaces are also going to be concrete, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I believe.
Well, not carpeted.
I don't remember if maybe in this actual office areas there might be carpet because it helps with the sound.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a non-enclosed truck washing option? I know a lot of people have, well, in the military at least, they have just open wash racks. And I was just wondering if that's something that expense-wise, if that's I mean,
Maybe.
Does it need to be enclosed? I guess that's the question.
That I don't know.
That's definitely would be a question for maybe Champlin. I'm not sure if it would need to be enclosed.
Below freezing weather, you got a problem.
Yeah, that's fair.
Depends, yeah, the temperature of the water and all, but yeah, okay.
Any other questions or comments on that? Is there any other old business from the board? Old business from staff?
No.
New business from the board? New business from staff?
None.
We have no subcommittee reports. Frank, do you have handy what our next subcommittee meeting is? Is there one on the 2nd?
July 1st.
July 1st.
To the next meeting.
Because that's the Monday,
Yeah.
not the 2nd. Okay.
Financial subcommittee.
Finance.
Okay, thank you. On the 2nd. Okay.
It's
The 1st.
Yeah, it's the first, yeah.
Okay. Staff reports.
Yes. I'll start with some congratulations to our employees. We'd like to congratulate Chelsea Roundtree. She was an algae specialist intern and is transitioning to our chemical specialist.
Great.
Um,
Okay, so I just want to pause on
Yeah.
that. So that's awesome. She was an intern and then is transitioning to a permanent role.
so it is temporary full-time.
Temporary role, but we had a role
It's
open that she
better.
took that's not an internship.
Correct.
So then the people around her as well encouraged her to come on. This was in a work environment that she wanted to stay in. So
Yes.
great. Congratulations. Okay.
Yes.
Sorry. Thank you. Please go
No, I
on.
love that.
Okay.
So Kenneth Larman is celebrating 1 year with CBU.
Great.
Joseph Gibson and Brandon Bray in T&D earned their CDLB licenses.
Awesome.
Adam Bennington earned his DSL water operator license.
Great.
And Danny Wall earned his wastewater collection systems 2 license.
Awesome.
I would also like to mention that given the heat this week, CBU is going to be providing our water cart at the corner of Walnut and Kirkwood. It should be out first thing tomorrow morning, and we are hoping to have it operational all week and overnight. Yeah. Yes, it would just provide drinking water. Yeah.
Thank
Yep.
you. Thank you to our team members getting that
So
out
those
there.
little cone paper cups or something like that? Is that what
Yeah, we're gonna start out with having those cone paper cups. Hopefully, there won't be any problems with having them there. But you know,
You can
we're
fill
gonna.
a bottle as well.
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely fill a bottle.
Could you just tell the process of how, like, I'm sorry, I can't, I've not seen this, so, do we fill it and then is it a truck or is it something
Oh,
we can drop
yeah.
off?
So yeah, it's we call it our water cart, and we drop it off, and it's basically like little sinks with little faucets.
okay.
And so you can fill up water bottles, you can fill up little paper cone cups.
You could
yeah.
wash your hands.
Yeah, I suppose
Okay.
so.
Okay, great. Well, that feels good.
Although I don't think there will be soap.
That's okay.
Uh,
Splash your face in the hot
Yeah.
heat. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Any other staff report?
I will check. I believe there is something on Facebook right now, but I will make sure that CBU has something on Facebook as well.
Thank you.
I think Monroe County Emergency Management lists all the cooling stations.
Mm-hmm.
We could add this to the list of
Oh.
community assets.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
on Kirkwood and where?
Walnut.
Oh,
Yep.
okay.
Right on the square.
What do you connect it to?
I believe we just connect them to hydrants.
Okay.
Okay. Any other staff reports?
No, that is all.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other petitions and communications? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? I know. Thank you all.